Welcome to DWP 2022 season. Our theme this whole year is whoever controls Africa runs the world. It follows, therefore, that in Africa, that controls Africa is the next superpower after the US and China. And it won't be just another superpower. Because of Africa's advanced humanity and spirituality, it will be the most advanced civilization ever before the end of this century. So our topic this month is the poorest, wealthiest continent, which is the paradox about Africa. So Africa has this dubious distinction of being the poorest continent, yet has more wealth than any other continent in the world. So we need to approach our theme this year in a slightly different way to the way we went about the business in 2021. What we do is we take one topic at a time and we slice it up a bit more. We are going to, in this particular topic, first go through the facts, then we explore the imperative issues that derive from those facts. And then we finally conclude around, therefore, what is it that we need to do to get Africa, to control Africa as the next superpower in this world. So let's just look at the facts first. They call it the curse of the riches because Africa is so wealthy, there is just no other continent close to it. Let me give you some basic facts here. And you probably already know these. You go on the internet, there's a lot of material there just to boggle your mind how wealthy Africa is. Africa has 40% of the world's gold. Africa has 90% of the world's chromium, 90% of the world's platinum. Africa has the largest reserves of cobalt, diamonds, platinum, and uranium. It has massive amounts of petroleum oil, the largest reserves of natural gas, copper, and iron. These are all elements of advanced industrial transformation. It's got massive amounts of bauxite, silver. No other continent comes anywhere close. Altogether, Africa has 30% of all known minerals in the world. And if we go to one of my favorite topics, Africa has 60% of all the world's arable land. It's got 10% of renewable water in the world and largest producer of cocoa, sugar, salt, timber, and tropical fruits. And you know, Africa has the most charismatic of wildlife. There is no other continent with so many animals in the wilderness that have incredible charisma. The lion. I mean, even the British have named their rugby team the British Lions, although they never had a lion ever. But the lions, the cheetahs, leopard, rhinoceros, giraffe, hippopotamus, absolutely incredible wildlife, the buffalo, you know. And not to forget our history, because that's part of the problem with Africa. We forget to always do the Sankofa thing, looking back as far as we can to gather what we've forgotten, to gather the wholesome bits, so that when we look forward, we can see the furthest. Africa is the cradle of humankind, and on that fact alone, has got the most advanced humanity and spirituality. But then, let's compare today how Africa compares with the rest of the world in terms of what the Western world has taught us to be economic growth. We have been taught to measure economic growth by way of gross domestic product, which is the market value of all final goods and services that are produced in a country or continent. So if we take by continent, Africa is the poorest continent. At the top is Asia, with almost 37% of all the wealth in the world, followed by North America. It's got about 28%. Europe's got 25%. South America has 3%. Africa has just over 2.5%. And yet, Africa has got just practically the same population as China and India. So, why is what we're going to go to in this next segment. But the most bothersome thing that we Africans have to deal with, that's why we have to go into the facts, is that even the facts that we are given are actually a miscalculation of the true wealth of Africa. You know, Africa today, even if you compare it with individual countries, is poorer than at least 5-6 countries in the world. When you take 55 countries together, the United States' gross domestic product in 2021 was $21 trillion, which leaves Africa at 2.8%, only measuring at about 12% of the United States' wealth. So the whole continent of Africa dwarfed by just one country. When you compare with China, Africa's economy is only 18%. Even the United Kingdom, a small little island, which with nothing, I mean, they have nothing, let's face it, maybe it's a bit of coal here and there. Africa has still got a smaller gross domestic product than the United Kingdom. I mean, South Korea, a recent Asian tiger, is equal to the whole of Africa in gross domestic product. So it tells us that not only is our wealth in Africa misunderstood, but also the way that it is calculated keeps telling Africans they are poor, when in actual fact, I have given you the facts. You know the facts. You check them on the internet. Just consult Professor Google. Is the wealthiest country. So we'll come in the next segment and look at then what are the consequences of this massive wealth of the continent, and how has the rest of the world dealt with it in order to control Africa. Thank you. So, what are the consequences of this massive wealth that Africa has? Well, it's simple. Over the last 300 years or so, you can look at a slow progress towards the rest of the world, especially Europe, trying to control Africa. And since then, as we'll see in a little bit, whoever controls Africa runs the world. The same applies today. So, whereas Africa is not poor at all, it's just that its massive wealth is being siphoned out of Africa every single day, right in front of our eyes. And we Africans are still kind of mesmerized. We have stopped analyzing. We have stopped looking at the facts. It's a mindset thing. That's why we are analyzing everything in detail. So here is how we look at the siphoning of Africa's wealth. If you look at the literature, if you go and examine the facts, you'll find that every single year, the net amount of wealth that leaves Africa compared to what comes into Africa is anywhere around $100 billion. So Africa is the creditor to the rest of the industrial world to the tune of at least $100 billion a year. Africa receives crumbs from the table in aid of $30 billion averaged in today's terms. So, as an example, on today's estimates, an average of about $30 billion is being stolen from Africa through illegal logging of our hardwoods and excellent forms of forestry, illegal logging, fishing, and illicit trade in our most charismatic wildlife. $50 billion a year average is being repatriated by massive corporations who are extracting profits from Africa, including remittances. And in addition to that, those same multinational corporations evade tax in Africa. They avoid paying tax to African governments to the tune of 35 billion US dollars every year. Then we have close to $40 billion that Africa is losing every year through climate change. And as you know, global warming is caused by the industrial world. Africa contributes very little, a negligible amount. So we are in Africa losing close to $40 billion just because the industrial nations don't care about Africa. Whosoever controls Africa, including today, also runs the world. But here is how this has played out over the last century and a half, for instance. We have had 3 scrambles for Africa over the last couple of hundred years. The first was the direct colonization, which was initially cemented in 1884 through the Berlin Conference, when the European nations sat around the table and carved out Africa amongst themselves. We know that story. The second scramble for Africa was through the Cold Wars as well as the World Wars. Now, we Africans, once again, because we don't interpret history according to us, we were schooled by the European colonizers to analyze history with respect to their own interests and their own perspective of how they want to control the world. But if we analyze both the world wars, both First World War and Second World War, as well as the Cold Wars, we will realize that these wars were actually fought over who controls Africa. I'm going to go through that in a bit more detail. The third scramble for Africa is what's happening now, when on paper we no longer have colonization. We still have the Cold War, but in today's terms, the scramble for Africa is more benign. It's an attempt to say, well, it's trade, it's a voluntary exchange. But when you then look deeply at it, it's still the United States, the European Union, and China fighting for who controls Africa's resources. Look at it carefully. That is the current scramble for Africa. And whoever is going to win that scramble of controlling Africa's resources today is going to run this world for the next 100 or more years. But however, analysts and commentators are quick to hasten that this third scramble for Africa, the more benign one, is easy to win for Africa, is the one that Africa should win, actually, because it's right in front of our eyes. We just have to do two basic things. One, love ourselves and believe in ourselves one more time so that we can fearlessly and forcefully control Africa for ourselves. And we'll be sharing with you people with similar views and other views. So this is why we've chosen this whole theme for this season. We are definitely concerned that Africa, once again, is kind of like sleepwalking into the future, missing the best opportunity so far to regain control of our continent and become the undisputed superpower in the next 50 years, faster than China did, actually. The only problem is Africans don't believe this. You kind of mesmerized with the idea that Africans can't do it. Actually, this is something not just possible, but should be done. So let me go into a bit more detail for you to understand and do more research for yourself why I say that the First World War and the Second World War were fought over Africa, and why I maintain that the Cold Wars are all still about controlling Africa. The First World War, remember, represented actually a major turning point for Africa because after the First World War was done, the current map of Africa has hardly changed, except for a few countries emerging here and there. But the First World War, remember, was essentially a quarrel between European powers around who is going to be the one controlling the world. And we know that the outbreak of hostilities in Europe was in greater part an attempt to control the European belligerents who were a big worry for the rest of the Europeans, Germany in particular. But by the time the First World War ended, every country in Africa was forced to commit one way or another to supporting the allies, basically Britain, France, Italy, Portugal, Belgium. Those definitely forced the African colonies to fight against the German colonies. By the end of the First World War, Germany was basically booted out of most of its colonies. And these were shared. The loot was shared amongst the so-called allies. So there you are. Africa was there to be distributed one more time by German territories going to the victorious allied powers. So the Second World War comes a little later in the 40s. So why do analysts also maintain that if you're African, you better realize that the Second World War was fought over Africa, and essentially the most important battles were to secure Africa? Why do we say this? The battles in North Africa were all to do with controlling the Suez Canal, which means access to Africa, access to the Middle East, access to Asia. So instead of Africans controlling this access, the Europeans wanted to control it, and they did fight to make sure they controlled the Suez Canal. Because remember, oil had become a critical strategic commodity due to increased mechanization and industrialization of these modern armies and so on. So there you are. This is why we maintain. This is why we have to discuss this issue for the whole season. Because whoever controls Africa runs the world. And it follows, therefore, that if we wake up and Africa starts controlling Africa, there's absolutely no continent which can stop Africa becoming the next most advanced superpower after United States and China, and do it in better style, because Africans, the reason Africans are feared, the reason why Africans have to be controlled by people of European descent is they are scared of Africa, scared of Africans. Africans are an unknown quantity. Once you release the potential in this sleeping giant, they know this is going to be the most powerful advanced civilization like it was in the beginning. So we'll come back to the last segment and then discuss, therefore, what does it mean moving forward? So what does all this mean for us? That is, Africa being the poorest and yet wealthiest continent in the world. This kind of paradox, this kind of dubious distinction. Well, whoever controls Africa runs the world. I'm going to repeat this the whole year. Why? Because that's all we need to understand, that when Africa controls Africa, it will be the next superpower, undisputed, after US and China. And when we discuss way forward, that's what we should be focusing. And when we discuss in the groups and exchange, that's what we should be discussing. So the third scramble is the benign one, is the one that is easiest to win for Africa. By 2025, Africa will be the largest ethnic group in the entire world. There will be more Africans than Chinese. One in every 5 human beings will be an African. So by 2025, well before 2025, what it means is that Africa needs a detailed plan for how to control Africa and grow it for Africans. That detailed plan should be a 100-year plan with a detailed 50-year plan for how we deal with those who currently control Africa and how we take over from them. Because don't be fooled. This world is, the missionaries may have helped the colonials to take over Africa, but they don't love you. The best they will do is respect you. And we have to look after our interests. So at the moment, China is going to be the undisputed superpower within the next few decades. Why? Because China, with far less resources than Africa, had a 100-year strategy for Africa. They had a 50-year strategy for each individual African country. They know each of the 55 countries more than we ourselves know these countries. So why should China have a 100-year strategy for Africa and a 50-year strategy for every African country when we as Africans do not even have a 100-year strategy for China? We don't have a 100-year strategy for the United States, for Europe. We need a 100-year strategy for each and every country in the world. That's where we should start. Wake up a little bit and realize that no one is going to do this for us, and that small little countries like UK with absolutely zero, small little piece of earth with nothing on it, people with just the courage to go and grab what the rest of the world has. I know we Africans don't do that, never do that. But definitely we need the love and courage to defend fearlessly what we have and forcefully do so. So I'm sure you'll be seeing there are lots of good-minded people, brilliant, who have spoken about this, that we're going to be sharing their views, and that we open up greater discussion on this issue. So with this rising consciousness amongst Africans that we are really going to be the next superpower after China, Africans should stop begging. I mean, who needs who? We're going to discuss this. Africans cannot continue to be the beggars of the world. In any case, with all the resources Africa has and the beauty that it has, Africa ought to be too proud to beg, really, anyway. And just remember, if we as Africans want to run this world, we don't need to colonize anyone. We don't need to attack anyone. We just have to control Africa and develop it for us. China itself, as one of my favorite activists will say,
Chinese love being Chinese, which is a outgrowth of the Chinese Revolution that Mao Zedong led, which he borrowed from the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. Yes, Garveyism liberated China. Yes, it did. Garveyism liberated China. Yes, it did. So the Chinese are a cultural force, a political force, an economic force. They are the Walmart of the planet Earth.
Dr. Uma Johnson, even China itself, when you go back into their own history of being colonized, they were just colonized like us, but they figured it out. And the moment they figured it out, they are not going to be controlled by any other race ever. Not in the near future anyway. But they also learned from the Africans. Africans started struggling around how to be once again independent, well before Chinese did. And the Pan-Africanists had a lot to teach the Chinese. So follow that discussion there by Uma Johnson. So let me go back to therefore why I am concerned about this and why you should be concerned too, because whoever controls Africa runs the world. So that is now clearer, and I hope that that becomes clear. So the one thing to do, like I say, fearlessly and fiercely, is to take control of what has always been Africa's God-given resources. As of today, China is winning the war, I think. I mean, it's still on. There's no way that the United States and Europe are going to be bygones in the next 50 to 100 years. They're going to still be superpowers. But China, as of now, has followed a path which makes them better positioned to control Africa's wealth than the former colonial masters and the US. So the cat is out of the bag. You know, there's no way to hide. It's clear that although these are cold wars and benign wars, these are all strategically intended and focused on world domination, because as China wins control of African resources, they are definitely winning the war as to who is going to be the next superpower. So we no longer have to wait our turn. We know US is, China is going to be the next one. We just have to ensure that we are the next superpower after China. We are going to discuss in the next topics just how trade and aid is destined to keep Africans poor, to keep Africans dependent. That's our next topic next month. Yet Africa today is still, as it was historically, the most economically wealthy continent. So putting it straight, the rest of the world just wants to keep Africa poor. Africa has to remain poor so that they can achieve their ambitions of controlling the world. Like I said, they'll never truly love you. They'll never collaborate with Africans, except as beggars, except as donors. Trade, as you know, is just a technical way of saying, you don't manufacture your products, we'll take them for a song as raw materials, we manufacture them for you and send them back to you. We're going to do a whole topic on that particular aspect. And as I've said already, and I'll repeat again, deep down, the rest of the world wants to keep Africa poor, for Africa to remain poor, because it is a sleeping giant. Africa is an unknown quantity that scares the rest of the world. So they have to keep the knee on Africa's resources. We're going to go through that in detail in next topic. So in conclusion, whoever runs the world has to control Africa. And we Africans, in order to be ourselves and in order to also run this world much better than these former colonials, we have to control Africa and be the next undisputed superpower. See you in the next sections. Thank you very much.